Good afternoon. Uh, we're here representing SCRS. Going to have a discussion about the blend study that we released on Tuesday. Uh, my name is Bruce Halcrow. I'm the current chair of SCRS.
I'm Michael Bradshaw. I'm the secretary of SCRS, also with K&M Collision Center.
And I'm Amber Alley. I'm the vice chair of SCRS, and I'm with Bersati's Body and Fender.
Gary Wano, past chairman of SCRS and president of GW & Son Auto Body.
So we were part of the committee that actually went and worked on the blend study in Wisconsin. We had the 5 biggest paint companies in the country there. We also had a third-party validator in DECRA there. We were at Global Refinish and Solutions Training Center, and Ford had donated several parts for us to use to make the study available. And we spent 4 days there going over and studying. It was not a time study. We were working on getting the delta between full refinish and the blend time of a panel, and we released the results on Tuesday. They came back to actually do a blend panel. Instead of being 50% of the full refinish time, it was 31.59 percentage more than full refinish, which is a huge difference. I think it's going to make a big deal in our industry. I think the question I'd like to ask y'all is, what difference do you think it's going to make in your shop personally and for other shops?
Yeah, so I know it's something we've discussed in our shop, and we've not really went by blend times per se for quite some time. We've been putting additional preparation time on blend panels to bring them to new and undamaged condition, because that's where our finish labor starts. But I think having this data, we're going to go away from that altogether. The bare minimum start point for us is now going to be full refinish time, because we know it's at least that, if not considerably more. So I think it's going to be really impactful for the industry, because now they're going to have something that they can point back to that's been validated by a third party, that has been done with a tremendous amount of transparency, where you can actually look at the data and see that. And I think, I just think it's a tremendous deal, because we've never had that kind of visualization of this type of data before.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to immediately move towards trying to have the discussion, right, on getting paid at least the minimum of a full refinish, and still maybe add some prep time to because being there in person, I mean, the numbers on the paper, right, are one thing, but being there in person, it became so obvious after the second day of what the results were going to be. I mean, I was surprised that it came back at 130. I mean, but it was very clear that we have been going about this wrong and not getting paid properly for blend panel. And so we've been talking about it since we came back in the shop, just, that and other operations that we need to look at more closely and have those discussions. And I think the white paper is done so nice, it's laid out so nice that we're going to use that, print it out, use it, discuss it, and hopefully, come to some bottom line of being able to work with our insurance partners in a better way with it.
Yeah, over the years, we've done a lot better job identifying processes that we never identified in the past. It's things we were doing the whole time, but by not identifying it, we were unable to get allocations, labor allocation, to go and get those operations taken care of. So now we're writing better sheets. We're actually performing blueprints, not just estimates. So when you look at what the study has done, is actually yet again identifying something that we're doing, have been doing. We're just going to get paid for it now. So it's not not adding a process to the car. It's not going to take you any more time to perform this task. Now we're just going to be paid for it. So the level of productivity in the stores are going to increase. It's not a big number, but there's going to be that piece of it for those of us that are maybe hindered with cycle time issues, depending on insurance relationships or whatever. If we're going to buy hours, then you're going to get a little more time to repair the process, or to repair less rental cars for whoever pays for rental cars when it happens. So there's just a gamut of different items that this is going to impact. So
Yeah, I think for our shop, we're going to make a fairly quick change into the times we do. Maybe just not use the blend operation at all. We'll discuss that with my staff when I get back. I think the reason that we decided to do a blend study, over the years we've had several of our members contact us questioning the time and how can we get this fixed. And we finally had the opportunity, and to be able to get the 5 paint companies together at one time had been a challenge, and this year they were all on board. They wanted to do anything they could that would help their customers too. So we're very thankful to them.
Just to kind of tag on some, and talk a little bit more about what I saw being there, and maybe, you guys can speak to this as well. But, Gary mentioned through the years, he's done a better job of accounting for the non-included items, right? The labor that we're having to perform that's not included in base refinish labor. But I think being there and watching the process, like me personally, that opened my eyes to things that I wasn't even considering. I think some things that shops need to be cognizant of when you come to refinish labor and kind of where it starts and the normal shipping damage, of those new parts, right? That has to be taken care of. And we witnessed it and documented it on every part that was coming out of a new box, whether it be a fender, whether it be, a door, whether it be a hood. They all had areas where the primer was rubbed through, or there was a little scuff here, or maybe a little imperfection in the primer. And so I think, this is a good opportunity for the industry to really kind of dive back into educating themselves on what is refinish, where does that process begin, right? And what do I have to do to get to the beginning of that process? It was really neat to be able to see that and see the consistency with which those things were popping up day after day after day. And I don't know if you guys kind of took the same thing away from that.
We had used 3 different colors during this process. We used a solid white, we used a silver metallic, and a tri-stage. And when we got to the end and put this all together, I think one of the things that was most surprising to me, of the 5 paint companies' timing, I think there was only about a 6% difference one way or the other. So it's really a consistent number.
Yeah, and I think it's important too. We had every paint manufacturer follow their procedure. There was no deviating from that. If that's how they come to your shop, my shop, teach our painters how to spray the paint, that's how we ask them to spray it. And they all came out with very consistent outcomes. And I think sometimes the industry doubts that, right? Or we're like, oh, this is faster, that's fast. But at the end, that none of that mattered. What mattered was that delta in between, right? The full refinish and the blend. And it just was. It was so obvious. We controlled all of the elements that could have been variables were controlled and consistent, and we looked at that, and when you peeled that onion back, it like I said, by the day 2, when the first 3 paint companies finished up, we didn't have the numbers, but I think we all knew, and I think they knew, and it felt good to be validated, but the numbers really drove that home. And again, to your point, made me think wow, this, all of the processes you go through. All of the discussions we had about prepping the parts you know, the damage and washing the parts and all of those things, that because we had to control all of those things, right, and make a judgment call if they were part of that delta or not. And ultimately we went with just a clean, transparent time difference between the two, and it was really mind-blowing.
Absolutely. Also thinking about the whole concept of and still in many markets, it's not invoicing for material to begin with, but still using that modifier, so many dollars per hour for refinish calculations, and that's another piece of it. I mean, I know all of you have had to have seen some incredible increases in your paint material costs over this last year. Not because, you know, not just because, but you know, was it the mineral problems and whatever else that come into place. I've heard tell, I don't know, I haven't seen it personally, but I've heard tell of as much as an 18% increase over the cost of material through 1 year's time. So you get 18% increase in material costs, and we've already got a defined number of hours, no matter what you do, that you're going to get to refinish a panel, whatever that panel might be. And if that modifier is made, that use of that modifiers in your paint materials, as long as that's the system, you're kind of stuck with what you're going to sell material-wise, unless, of course, those refinish hours increase. So by having this opportunity, not only are we going to see the increase in the allocation of labor by whatever that might be, but also with that type of modifier, we're going to, you know, material dollars are going to come back. So, or material sales dollars will come back. So.
To me, looking at it, it was a huge undertaking. The time that we spent Zoom calls together, figuring out how we were going to attack this, what processes we were going to do, and then to be able to go in and actually put it into play. We had painters there that their job is to train painters. We didn't have average technicians in a shop. We had guys that's what they do for a living, is train people. So I think that just adds to the validity of the results we came up with on that.
Also, the equipment was top notch. It was a controlled atmosphere that's trained, right? It's not in a dust. It was a dust-free environment. Like all of these things, right, made it. But going back to your point, the other piece of this is we're talking about blend, but we're also facing, right, base coat reductions. We're seeing that on a lot of the sheets. And when you look at, if you apply this theory to that, we really shouldn't be accepting base coat reductions either, right? Because what is that? I mean, if it's more time to blend and you have to have that talent and the skill, and it takes longer to achieve that, you could make that same potential argument for base coat reductions. So I just think that that's something in my shop I'll also be reviewing with my estimating team.
I mean, I think the interesting part about this, you know, since I've been involved with the society for the last 10 years, right? You know, little less than 10 years, but let's say 10 years. This has been a hot issue with the industry, right? Time and time again, we've heard shop owners, we've heard refinish technicians, we've heard managers and blueprinters say, this blend time's not right. There's no way it's 50%, right? When you first got on the board, which I don't mean to date you here, but you know, 20 years ago, right? 20, 22, however long it's been.
I like 20.
Right, 20. All right, we'll say 20. I mean, same issue, right? Like this has been an issue that's been prevalent in our industry for 30 years. And I feel like from a shop perspective, for so long there has been such a mistrust with the information providers, because there are things that we know just aren't right. And you know, we've got the DG, and the DG has data to support that, you know, about half the time their labor times are not accurate. And so I think for me this is a inflection point for the industry, right? Like, where do we go from here? We've had an entity that has taken this study on. It's been validated by a third party with tremendous amount of transparency, right? So Now, if you're the information providers, any of them, all of them, you know, I would challenge them to do the right thing. I mean, this is their opportunity to be transparent. If they really feel it's 50% and they feel they have the data, publish that data to the industry. You know, have it validated by a third party, because at this point, I think we have reached kind of a point of no return, where if they're going to continue to operate, you know, behind the closed doors that they've done for so long, you know, just kind of throwing some of these labor times at the wall and seeing what sticks and seeing what people complain about. I mean, it is an opportunity to go forward together, working towards the same goal, or to go down vastly different paths. And so I think it's important for shops. You know, you're a customer. You're a paying customer for whatever estimating provider you use, right? Have those conversations with your account representatives. Ask them, hey, what are you guys doing about this? You know, I just, again, it's an opportunity for the industry to really make the information providers finally become a little transparent on what it is they're doing.
Well, as a national association, our job is to get the information to the shops, and how the shops use it then is totally up to them. However, I think Michael nailed it. You know, I know what my IP bill is every month, and I expect them to do the right thing out of this.
Should we talk about all of the things that went into helping, like Ford? You touched on it, but I think we should go into a little bit more detail about, as Ford donated for this study over $20,000 in parts that we were able to then, after they were painted, ship off to a school, donated them to a community college or to a technical college, right? Which was amazing.
There were so many people and companies involved, right? The refinish manufacturers. You had all 5 refinish manufacturers. Was it Axalta, AXO, BASF, Sherwin, and PPG, right? We had them all. They were there. They donated material. They donated the time of their instructors and trainers, some of the best people that they had, you know, for this task at their companies. GFS donated, I mean, just tremendous facility. You know, I came away extremely impressed with their manufacturing facilities, the way they're manufacturing things in-house, and they were extremely gracious, took care of everybody, fed everybody while they were there. You know, to have Ford donate all those parts when supply chain issues are so prevalent, right? And then to be able to give them back to the community college and put them in the hands of future technicians in this industry and further them. I mean, to accomplish validating, you know, what blend times are, but then to have everybody work together like they did, and then actually give back, you know, to the future techs. I mean, I don't think that kind of thing happens very often, right?
You're absolutely right. It didn't sound like there was a point in a time in that room, in that facility, that you could feel any hostility or any type of competitive nature between the paint companies either. You know, when it was explained to them that you just follow your processes. We're not trying to figure out whose paint is the quickest, whose operations require less or more skill levels, whatever the scenario may be. Just do what you do, and I mean the level of peace in the room was it was just great. So yeah.
The camaraderie, right? It was it was almost, once they got going, they all worked together seamlessly, got along, were cutting up, and I mean, it felt like being out in a body shop, you know?
So professional. So the first day for both, we did three paint companies. So the first day they went in and they did the full refinish of the 3 panels. And we set up everything. There was the fender, door, and hood. And then they worked tirelessly that day. I mean, an 8-hour nonstop, in the booth, out of the booth, constantly working, never complained. The next day we went back in and they did 3 sets of the blend panels. And stayed, helped, helped clean up everything. I mean, just a total professional group of individuals.
It was, what Bruce said earlier, it was 4 days. It was a long 4 days.
was a long 4 days.
It rivaled the 4 days here at the SEMA show. I mean, there was some long days, a lot of hard work, and very impressed by everybody's work ethic.
It was the epitome of watching paint dry.
And then to get the opportunity on Tuesday to present at CIC, the paint companies all again sent one of their representatives to sit on the panel. Decker's guy was there. It was just an incredible opportunity to be in the room, and from what we've been told, it was the largest crowd at a CIC meeting, and for CIC to give us that opportunity for the industry, I thought was pretty awesome too.
Yeah, it really, going back to the conversations that we all individually need to have with the IPs, right? Like we can't expect, we've put that information out there right now. We as owners, managers, shops, the public, right? The customers, in a lot of cases, we're the consumer too. We need to figure out how to have those conversations, take this information and move forward with it. But I think it's interesting how the industry came together for the common good of and I mean, even us, like we have a feeling, we knew it would be more, but no one knew how much more. And I think the fact that all of these people stepped up and dedicated themselves and their time and their money and their resources and have supported this, I really hope that the IPs do choose to sit down and come up with a solution that works well for us, the industry, as the industry came together to make this happen.
Well, and I think the most important thing is that it's a transparent solution. Like I think that is what the industry is owed at this point, is that whatever the solution that they feel is the right solution, is they're transparent in how they arrived at that. Because this data is available for everybody in the industry. We've not redacted anything. Anybody that wants to go download it in its entirety is more than welcome to. More than welcome to ask questions. I just, again, transparency. And I think probably the last thing I want to say is just how cool it was, right, to be a part of it. I mean, we talk about how everybody worked together, but like, to me, these are one of these things we can look back on 10, 15, 20 years down the road and be like, man, we were there when that happened. It's just pretty neat.
But it's going to take, I think it's going to take each one of us, though, as well. I mean, what I'm going to say that is, the information's out there, but if we don't take this and move it to our competitors, to our markets, to our state associations, whatever the scenario is, get it out there so it does, so the voice is very, very loud all over the country that particular allocation is not right, and we have to move. We got to move it. We got to move the bar, and it's going to take each one of us singing that same voice. It's going to say each one of us screaming that. Well, not screaming. I'm probably a little loud.
We can scream.
Yeah, it
Listen,
could be
we'll
scream.
There's real power in knowledge.
Yeah, there you go.
Real power in
Absolutely.
knowledge.
So you can go to the SCRS website, download the white paper. It's very thorough, very accurate. I think it'd be a great tool for anybody to have available in their shop to share. And if maybe a bill payer isn't paying attention, have a copy ready for them the next time they show up. Email it to them, mail it to them, so that they can't say they weren't aware. Or, I think if you're involved in a state association, make sure that your state association is letting all the members in the state know about it.
Yeah, I think we work in these little fragmented groups, right? But we all have to pull the oars on some of these issues. I mean, we can't. Like we said before, I mean, we are all volunteers on the board of the SCRS, but we also fight the good fight back in our own shops, right? And on a personal level, sometimes that can feel very overwhelming, but there is power in knowledge and power in numbers. And, you know, if the more of us are educating ourselves and using that and holding the people we pay accountable, right? I mean, we pay for IP service. Like
We're the customer.
We're the
right?
customer.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we should be able to have those arguments. And again, I mean, in a professional manner, right? And I think that's what this gives you. Like Bruce said, you know, you print it out. It's not a reaction, just an emotional reaction, right? It's a reaction based on fact, and that changes the conversation.
But the other neat thing about this too is, so we all deal with issues in the industry, and there's a lot of times where an issue may impact 50 or 60% of the industry, you know, or maybe even 30%. This is an issue that if you are in the collision repair industry and you have paint that you apply to vehicles, it impacts you. This impacts the industry in its entirety, and I think that is why it's so important to get this in the information, get this information in the hands of everybody you can that is within this industry, because it does affect them and they are being impacted by it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really started the conversation of us doing this is when you look at the 3 different IPs, and they all have different full refinish times on each of those panels. One might be 3.2, one 2.8, and the third one 2.6. But they were all 50% was their number for a blend, and I think that made that a very questionable time to begin with. And the other thing I think that hasn't been mentioned yet up here is when that last time study, or when they come out with the 50%, we're spraying lacquer in shops. I can't even buy lacquer in my area. So, you know, we need to be more consistent with the IPs and make sure that the times they're allotting reflect on the product we're using today.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about it is, so in every field there's an expert, right? So if you have the 5 companies that produce the product, train the industry as a whole on how to use the product, develop the product, warranty the product, if they're all telling you it's not 50%, right? What makes you the expert? What gives you the authority over them? And I think that's where we are now, right? You've got the true experts have established, and it's been validated. These are the processes, this is what we have to do, and this is how much it was. And so if these IPs have an expert they feel trumps that, again, I challenge them to be transparent.
Well, I think that it's also an epidemic that in our industry, right, where we just throw numbers out there. That's 0.5, that's 0.3, that's 0.8. And I think that is part of the problem that's got us here. We're relying on other people to set the tone, right, for what we're doing. And every repair is different, right? It's not, you're not ever really doing the same thing over and over. And some things need to have logic applied to them, you know? We just can't, with technology now, we just can't keep accepting a standard, because the standards change job to job, and now tools to tools, car maker to car. I mean, some of the things that are there do need to be discussed and maybe reviewed, because to your point, we're not spraying lacquer anymore, right? Cars now have cameras and electric batteries and all kinds of things. We need to be able to have those conversations.
We're living in the future, right? Like, I mean, we're truly living in the future.
I think one of my favorite classes I've taken this week, his mantra was, something has to change. And I think this gives us the opportunity to start some of that change.